What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Gridiron Uncensored podcast. We've had a little break in the action, but we're just getting everything ready for this preview of the group of five, since they are now ready for some playoff action, baby.
That's
we
right.
got the 12-team playoff. We're full-fledged into 2024, and there's so many teams battling for this spot. It's one spot, one automatic qualifier
for 70 teams.
It's yeah. So there's a lot of action that's going to be happening. They all play each other, which is great. So I mean, we're going to find out through the course of the season who is the main team. And already in the offseason, you kind of have a group that's separated themselves. I feel like, Trevor, I know you feel the same way.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of teams that, I mean, it's a group of five. These teams, they beat each other week in and week out. Knock somebody off that they shouldn't lose to. Old Dominion upsets team. Like it's a great group. It's great football. So I'm excited that they're included in this playoff. Now, caveat to all of it, we got some crazy shit looming soon, boys and girls. The transfer portal. The spring portal is waiting.
Everybody thought the coaching carousel was crazy. Wait till this starts. This is going to be insanity.
I mean, we're already getting names like a week in advance. Hey, I intend to enter the portal. I intend to, and they're big names. So it's going to be interesting to see if the group of five gets rated and if it totally nukes our season previews for these.
Yeah, this whole conversation could change very quickly.
And it could. And if it does, we will update you. Yeah. But it's, we're going to give you our thoughts. Time doesn't stop for anybody. So we still have to put this stuff out, get you guys prepped for the season. And that's what we're going to do. And he said, once the portal hits, I mean, you can have a team go from there's for sure the number one team in this conference in the MAC or whatever, and they could go straight to a bottom feeder. It could happen in the power conferences too.
But yeah, you say that, but now it just comes to mind. What if it's the opposite that happens? What if it's that the Power 5 teams start losing their players because I want to be a starter. I want to be, because it's a lot of these student athletes it's like, what have you done for me lately type of thing. Yeah. And so if they don't feel like they're getting the love from wherever they're at, I wouldn't be surprised if some really high profile guys start moving around from teams that we already maybe think, like, for example, like Ohio State, they have like a plethora of like 4- and 5-star quarterbacks, including Will Howard.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I don't know what's going to happen. This is going to be insanity.
And that's very possible. And that's why this window is starting when it is, because most spring practices and spring, games they just went on today.
Mm-hmm.
So these teams, they should have their, rosters shaken out in their depth chart. These guys all right, I'm second string. I thought I was going to be first. I'm out. I'm going to somebody else that can contend. And like you said, some of these group of fives could be laying in wait that are primed. I mean, they're going to get a slot. And if you see a team that, hey, this team's already stacked, they've got good coaching, why not go there and still get in the playoffs?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is completely off topic. I'm going to ask you this question because it just popped into my head. I'm going to just do it before we really get into the group of five. I watched the Ohio State, whatever spring game or whatever, just out of curiosity. And I'm telling you what, dude, I'm not even kidding you. I will be severely impressed if they still decide to go with Will Howard after seeing what Julian's saying, how he was just dropping dimes and he had so much, he had such a live arm. That kid is I will be surprised if Will Howard still wins that job coming out of spring ball.
I've seen people saying that Sayan had the lead coming into this weekend. Based on who they had out there, it looked like
he was getting them a lot of playing time.
He was getting a lot of playing time. Howard had a lot of snaps, but he was rough on some of his deeper passes. Even there was a series where he was inside the 15 and he threw a corner route that was really low to Jeremiah Smith, and he couldn't get it
a couple times. He did that a couple times, yeah.
Yeah, and they overthrew it. So I don't know. I still think McCord was still a fine quarterback. I don't think he should have been ran out of town. But hey, Syracuse, I think
for Will Howard, he shouldn't have.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I get it.
I wanted to get your thoughts on it real quick because I watched it. I was just like, Well, I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit more of a quarterback controversy at Ohio State. We might see Will Howard hit the transfer portal instead of.
I mean, wouldn't that be some crazy? It's possible, but
After everything.
We're going to keep you guys posted on Ohio State. And on all the other teams. We're going to get into those guys. But yeah, big games today in the college football world with the spring games and seeing who, maybe how these things shake out. Again, it is spring ball, still shaking out the kinks, but it was. Hey, there's a battle there. All right,
there's a battle there.
So watch out for Columbus. It could burn at some point if things don't go the way they want it to. Let's get going into the group of 5. Trevor, if you want to start off, hit me with your teams and what you're thinking. I know you said you were going to do it a certain way.
Yeah, so I was going to do a certain way, kind of last to first. And I've only got 3 teams that I'm watching in the group of 5 that I think have a legitimate shot between the talent they have on the roster, the schedule that lays out for them, and the coaching staffs and everything like that. So one, while I have Appalachian State as one of my contenders, where I think that they will have a very, very nice record at the end of the season. And I do believe they will be a Sun Belt conference champion, really. And the thing that I'll be keeping an eye on mostly is towards the beginning of the year, where they're playing Clemson, JMU, and Troy. If they can go 2-1 in that little between those 3 games, then I would write them in as, you could definitely make an argument for them to be in the playoff. Now, after them, the next team on my list for that, and Brendan, actually, let me stop myself. I'm not going to keep going. Do you want to throw some tidbits of App State in there?
Yeah. So with App State, like you said, Sun Belt, I feel like their schedule really works out for them
because of just the talent. I swear, App State always seems to just pull in these speed demons.
They do.
They just fly all over the field, and mad respect for App State. I've always had respect for them ever since way back when that one game we don't talk about.
Don't bring it up. Don't do that to us tonight. What the hell's wrong with you? I was having a good evening.
I know. Well, when we're talking about App State, whether we brought it up or not, someone would have brought it up.
You cannot talk about them without talking about that game.
You cannot talk about App State without talking about App State and Michigan. You really can't.
2007, one of the biggest upsets in college football history.
Yeah, and it still is talked about that way.
Yeah, and it's an epic game, and I love what they've done, especially in their transition to the FBS from the FCS divisions. But no, Trevor, I agree with you. App State is one of my teams. Like you said, the schedule shakes out really well for them. They have an early test against Clemson, like you said, in week 2. But what they return is, something that I think is what really helps them. They got Aguilar coming back at quarterback, and he really turned it on last season.
Yep.
I mean, this guy was it. They did lose their conference title, like you said, to Troy, but Troy's lost a lot. They lost
a lot. They lost their head coach.
Yeah.
Like he was a huge deal to them.
So they're going to be finding out themselves. They're not even on the schedule. And really, when you look at it, the biggest games for App State in conference are going to be Liberty, which is going to be a contender in my eyes, and then a sneaky game against Louisiana. The raging freaking Cajuns, man. I was kind of considering them. I might say they're a team that could have an off chance to knock some people off because Louisiana, I feel like they're always a good team.
Yeah,
but when you look at it, it's Liberty, a game against Louisiana, and then that's really it. I mean, Coastal maybe. They're not a bad team, but they're still different. James Madison has lost a lot of people to Indiana. They lost their coaching staff. So really, you look at that, they have a very easy path to the Sun Belt Championship. And that's where I'll talk about one of my favorite teams down the line, Trevor. But no, I'm absolutely with you. App State's got a good chance.
Yeah,
they brought a lot from the portal too.
They did. And the thing about App State that most teams actually can't say right now, and that's that they were able to keep continuity by having not only their coach, but both coordinators return on top of the quarterback, on top of Aguilar coming back. So, I mean, they've got a lot of continuity at that program right now, and they have momentum because they did have a pretty darn good season other than the loss to Troy. But I really think that they have a good chance. And I tell you what, if Clemson goes into or plays App State and isn't prepared, there's a potential where they just become giant killers once again and knock down Clemson a few pegs.
App State is one of those teams that you have to take serious, no matter who you are. And
Absolutely.
we'll talk about another one of your teams here in a minute that's also on my list that also does that to people. Who's next on your list, Trevor?
The next one on my list is you can make an argument for one or the other, but my next one on my list is Tulane. And Tulane is just, they had a phenomenal season, pretty much all season last year. And they come in with a brand new head coach, but not an untested coach. Right. And Troy's head coach is now with Tulane, and he's a proven winner, also a very young coach, which we've seen some trends happening where the younger coaches are starting to get the excitement of the recruits a little bit because they're, I don't want to say because they're closer in age necessarily, but I mean, that does play a factor in all of that. Yeah. So with John Summerall coming in, he just little stats on John Summerall, which most people probably don't know if you're just a casual fan from Troy. He's came from Troy. He's been 3-0 in his postseason with the Trojans. The last two seasons they won conference titles, and he is with Tulane. He's coming into a great situation mainly because SMU is no longer in the American.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're just being real about it, it's Tulane, and probably if you can make a case for Memphis, and maybe UTSA. UTSA is an American. Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, maybe those two teams, but outside of that, Tulane is sitting in the driver's seat. I would say they have a semi-tough schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Semi-tough schedule, mainly because they have to end the season against Memphis. Granted, it's at home, but they're also playing at home to Kansas State and then at Norman in Oklahoma and the Sooners. And then on top of that, the conference schedule, I mean, these teams aren't always cakewalks. The Raging Cajuns are always tough. South Florida, you never know what you're going to get with them. And then the rest of them, it's kind of a toss up in what kind of team you get. But I think Tulane is probably, if you were talking about American, probably the most likely to come out of that a conference champion. What their record is, I would probably say that they're going to have 2 losses on their record. If I was a betting person, I don't see them. Well, no, Kansas State lost a lot, so it's possible. If they can go 2-0 the first part of the season, I think that they will be in great shape. If they go in 2-0 when they're going to go into Oklahoma, excuse me. But yeah, that Tulane's a good one. What you got, Brian?
Yeah, so on Tulane, I absolutely agree with you. They had a funky start to their offseason, losing Willie Fritz and Michael Pratt as well. Obviously, he's gone off to the draft, so you lose your star quarterback. So everybody's like, okay, Tulane, they've had a great run. This is danger time for them. They have to hit a home run higher. And like I said, they went and got Summerall from Troy, which I think he was a hot commodity anyway, and they landed him. And that's a great hire, in my opinion. Like you mentioned, great hire. He's battle tested. He's known. And that's what you need in the American Conference. And that's what you need for recruiting and for this transfer portal era that we're in. They also, talking about the portal, they did bring in some guys from Troy, some known players from Troy. And then they went out to replace Michael Pratt with Ty Thompson from Oregon. So there's your quarterback. I mean, we'll see how he does, in game action a little bit, different than the Pac-12. So, I mean, there's no reason he can't come in with the talent around him and do well. They brought in defensive back help from Power 4 teams. So, when I look at what they've got, they got Shaz Preston from Bama to be a weapon outside. They've got the things and the tools to make that run, like you said, again, in the American Conference. And like you said, when you look at the schedule, it comes down to it's a tough schedule early. I said it a couple weeks ago when we talked about the toughest schedules in 2024. They were one of my teams. Like, hey, keep an eye on Tulane. They've got Kansas State and Oklahoma early, back to back. Even if they don't knock them off, they've got potential to do it to both teams if they're not ready. Oklahoma's a different team. Kansas State's got a lot, like you've mentioned. So it's very possible. Maybe they knock one off. But then you got to watch out for Louisiana. Again, that's enough. I mentioned them earlier. USF is a team to watch. Outside of that, I feel like, yeah, you're right. It's all the way down until Memphis.
Yep.
And if they can, do that, they have free range, and they should be set up pretty well to get into, the playoff conversation or top 25.
At minimum, they're after that Oklahoma game. At minimum, they will be favored in every game until they may not be as favored against Memphis. But other than that, I think they will be favored or expected to win every game after Oklahoma.
Yeah. I mean, they've done well in the portal, good coaching staff. There's no reason that they can't come out and still field a great team and maybe, like we said, knock off one of these teams that are not ready for them. So that's a big one you got to watch for Tulane. I love this team. Just in general.
The green wave. I'm on board with the green wave. I wasn't necessarily on board last year, but I am this year just because of the different wrinkles that they have going on with the new head coach from Troy, which I've read a lot about, and I like the way he does things. He is very highly sought after, so it may just be a head coach rental, to be honest. If they have a good season, it may just be a head coach rental for them.
It very well could. Talking about another team that's a new head coach. I think they're your number one, Trevor.
They are my number one. Boise State is who we're talking about. Boise State. I'll tell you what, they lost their head coach mainly because the administration saw fit to fire him in the middle of the season. Well, actually, with 2 games left in the season. But still, the first time head coach Spencer Danielson, he did a really good job of kind of righting the ship, for lack of a better term. Also, another young head coach. He's only 35 years old. Boise State went 2-0 with him, and then they beat the brakes off of UNLV by 24 points to win their first conference title in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'll tell you, I really like him. I'm glad that they kept him on because I think that's at least good for the players because maybe he wasn't the head coach, but he was there on staff that whole season.
Yeah.
So it's really not losing a whole lot as far as that. I like that decision from them. And also, they did bring in a former Boise State and Arizona head coach, Dirk Cutter, for their OC position to kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, give them a little bit of clout with some recruits, maybe. And also, don't know how many of you have followed this, but also Malachi Nelson, the 5-star quarterback transfer, the freshman from USC. Probably a lot of people forgot about that with all the craziness that's happened. But yes, he is there at Boise for the time being. Maybe. Maybe that might change come next week, but we'll see.
Jeez, man.
But yeah, I mean, they got a pretty decent schedule. It is not easy. I mean, because they do play in the Mountain West, and whether you like it or not, the Mountain West is very competitive.
Yes,
with the teams within the conference, they beat up on each other quite a bit. So I mean, they start the season off with Georgia Southern. That's a pretty good warm-up game. Georgia Southern's not no slouch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not Boise State, but they are a pretty decent program. Then they go to Oregon, and that's a rough one. And they do have Washington State. Not many people know what we're going to get with Wazoo this year. It's going to be kind of up in the air, but
Mhm.
I mean, it's still Wazoo. UNLV probably looking for some revenge, and it'll be in Las Vegas, so that's something. Man, this schedule isn't. I mean, Wyoming's a tough one. Oregon State at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Boise State is my favorite to be the team out of the group of 5 to come out and get to the playoff. And I'll tell you, Brendan, I know you're going to echo this, but if they make it to the playoff, look out. Power 5,
Yeah.
look out. Because these guys are going to be motivated
Oh,
to
hell yeah.
show what they're worth.
They've
And
done it before. They'll
they've
do it
done it.
again.
Oh my gosh, yes. Different coach, different personnel, but they keep doing it.
Yeah.
But what do you think about old Boise State?
It's the aura of them, man. You know, I know I've seen that phrase being tossed, or aura, like they're but it is. I mean, it's Boise State, man. They just have that feeling to them, and you should be scared to play them if you're a Power 5 team. Well, excuse me, a Power 4 team. RIP to the Pac-12. They're KIA. I know we've got their remnants in the schedules with the Mountain West.
Yep.
You know, they've worked that, but like there's skeletons of themselves, you know, of who their past lives were. Washington State's been raided. Oregon State's been eviscerated by, you know, I mean, they've got some players in from the portal, but still, like, I mean, just totally different from last year's Oregon State team. But no,
Right.
I mean, I'm with you. Boise State returns a lot of starters from their team that went 7-2 in conference. You know, the coaching change is something similar to Michigan. They kept it in house. It keeps continuity, shows, you know, stability, I think. So I don't think it's a bad hire. The team seems to rally around him. But then, you know, they lost Taylor Green to Arkansas, and people were pretty worried about that. And he was at the spring game today for Arkansas, and he was playing really well. So that'll be interesting for Arkansas moving forward. But they went out and got Malachi Nelson, like you said, former 5-star. So he's
Really
obviously a very talented guy. Quiet. It's been very quiet.
Yeah, and really quite. I mean, at the time, it was quite shocking. I know me and you talked about it. We're like, a USC 5-star quarterback just went to Boise State. Like,
yeah,
kind of threw me off a bit. It just makes me wonder if like there's things that we don't know.
Yeah.
Like if he has issues with comprehending a playbook or whatever, I don't know, but
it's very possible. I mean,
but a
USC
5-star just I feel like 5-star going to Mountain West, either he had lack of options or he didn't get any offers that he liked. Or
it's a strange, you know, because you see that you're like 5-star. Okay, that guy's instantly he's going to go to another Power 4 team, and then interesting, Boise State. But it's
he's going to get a starting job.
Slouch, but yeah, I mean he should be. I mean he should be the starter. There's no question. And so they went out and fixed that. They've got some wide receiver help from Indiana and Cameron Camper. So I mean, like I said, they return a lot of starters. There's no reason this team cannot be one of the top teams in the group of 5, battling in the top 25 for that, you know, spot in the playoffs.
Yeah. So I mean, let me ask you something real quick. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but no, I'm curious. What do you think their record has to be to get them into the playoff? Obviously, they have to win their conference, but because there's only one spot, so they have to get all the way to the conference championship regardless.
I'll say they cannot slip up. They cannot. And you're already knocking down the Oregon loss. Like you anticipate that's going to be a loss.
I think if they lose more than 2 games, they're done. They won't get there.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the schedule. I mean, we know the Mountain West is tough. It's tricky, like you alluded to. They beat up on each other. UNLV's, San Diego State's always an interesting team. San Jose State, I know they just lost their head coach, but I mean they still can mess around. Wyoming's always a team. I know they lost their coach, but they replaced from within. To me, I think they're going to be right up in the mix. So you've got a schedule. If you win out, you should be right there in the top.
Honestly,
25.
If they win out their schedule outside of the Oregon game and maybe one other game during the season, hopefully it's not a conference game, it would be very hard to put a different group of 5 team over Boise State just because of their schedule.
Yeah.
maybe Tulane if they have a bomb they have like an awesome season and they happen to beat Oklahoma maybe and pull off that upset. And also beat Kansas State, because it would require them to at least beat Kansas State and then take that L with Oklahoma and then potentially run the table all the way to Memphis,
Yeah.
and then get to the championship game again. All of this centers around all of these teams have to get to the championship game.
And
Like there's no way around it.
I know people have hated on the 12-team playoff and, whatever, but I love that these teams are fighting for a position in the playoff. To me,
And
there's
I
so many
love
more
that
games that are meaningful.
I love that most conferences are getting rid of sides of the conference.
Yeah.
I
It's
didn't
top
like
two.
it. I didn't like it. Top two get to the championship game, period, end of story.
Yeah.
I think that's the way it should be. That's the way it's always should have been. But yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes it a de facto like playing playoff game.
Yep.
Hey, you lose.
Especially towards the end of the season. Like if it's like, either win and you're in, that's
I'm telling you guys, I know there's a lot of change, but I think it's gonna be fun.
It's going to be fun. You just got to kind of accept that it's a change that's happening. It's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
If you love college football, you're going to continue to love college football. It's just going to have a different wrinkle to it.
Yeah. So no, I'm with you. I think Boise State has every opportunity. They just can't stumble. 11-1, maybe 10-2. If they go 10-2, they could be there, but it's going to be close. If they go 11-1 and Texas State is a team that I'm going to talk about later. If they're 12-0 and Boise State's 11-1, I think when you look at the schedule, you would have to take Boise State just based on who the schedule is and the tougher conference.
That is the one thing that I think most audience will talk about, at least the group of five crew. It's like, well, strength of schedule is a huge thing. And really the group of five is really going to have to consider doing the non-conference more difficult.
Yes.
They're going to have to consider doing it that way. I know a couple of them, like we just already talked about, that Tulane and Boise State both play kind of high profile programs this season with Oklahoma and Oregon, and even Kansas State on Tulane's schedule. So that's a good thing, but more of these group of five teams are definitely going to have to schedule big time games.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. And to me, again, this is all a good thing. This is all a good thing of, all right, if we're going to get in and we've got a weaker strength of schedule than some of our other group of five counterparts, we've got to figure out a way to beef up our schedule. If the conference isn't going to do it for us. So yeah, no, I think it's great. And I think, like you said, Boise State, one of the top teams in the group of five, and will have a great chance to be in contention. 100%. Trevor, I mentioned Texas State. Do you mind if I go ahead and
go for it, man? I want to hear it.
So Texas State is a team, and I'm not the only one, okay, that feels this way. But you look at their schedule and that what they did last season and what they have going for them this season, they have every opportunity to go undefeated. I mean, it's really they've got two tests early. UTSA being in week 2 after playing Lamar. UTSA is another one of the teams I have on my list as a potential team. UTSA has, good players. They've got, great coaching staff. If they can get past them, you play Arizona State, who's not the Arizona State of old, who they're new in the Big 12, with the whole conference change. So that's still a Big 12 win. That's a Power 4 win. If you get past that right there, you go to Sam Houston, Troy, Arkansas State, Old Dominion. The funky game against Louisiana was what I call it. Louisiana Monroe, Southern Miss, Georgia State, and then South Alabama. There is no reason this team, with what they have, cannot go 12-0. They went out, and again, they've got a lot of players back. They did lose players to the portal, but they went in and got UTEP's leading rushers, both of them. They've got a lot of players in the portal. And then they went out and got the Sun Belt Player of the Year, Jordan McLeod, from JMU, who was, awesome last year. He's fast. He's able to run. He can throw. This team has all the makings of somebody that can go 12-0 with this schedule. But like you said, if you balance this schedule with Boise State's, and Boise State only has a one blemish to Oregon, they might get jumped just based on strength of schedule. But I'm a big fan of Texas State and what they have this year. And I think they could easily go in and be the head team for the group of 5 just based on the schedule alone and probably going 12-0.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel it, man. I'm riding that wagon, man. Maybe it's just because I'm in Texas. And
I do like what I'll tell you what I mean, I like what Texas State is doing. I liked it last year. I didn't like what Prime was doing with Colorado because it's a Power 5, but Texas State, I mean, you got to get creative.
Yes.
To bring in people, and that's the way that they need to do it, to at least get the attention. I mean, then by all means, Colorado shouldn't need to do that to get the attention of Colorado, to get the attention of recruits, but they do. But anyways, how I managed to put Prime in the middle of this conversation, I'm not sure, but it happened.
He's doing his job, man. I mean, he's not going in home recruiting. Apparently, that's weird.
Yeah,
that's a weird one.
That's not normal.
He's there. I don't feel like it. Either way, we're talking about Colorado, so I guess he's doing his job. Jesus, Pete.
But no, I was, Texas State, that'd be a really cool story if they made the playoff this first year of the playoff. It'd be a cool story. Mm-hmm. I just have a hard time reconciling that they would, even with their schedule, be able to jump even a 11-1, say even a Liberty that returns their Caden Salter. Yeah. They have their guys back. I mean, it's just one of those things where I'm not sure if even if they went 12-0, I don't know if they would be able to jump either a Mountain West champion Boise State, an American champion in Tulane, or a Conference USA champion in Liberty, if they have they go into the championship games 10 wins or more.
No, and you're absolutely right. And we also haven't talked about conference championship game too. This is another team that they would have to play, one of the teams we've also mentioned, App State. If App State meets them in the conference championship game, that would be a huge matchup.
That would be a monster, especially if they are both in the running.
Yes.
To make the playoff with the record they have. And what I have been reading, though, folks, if you haven't been following, that the benchmark for a group of 5 starts at 10 wins. That's what they're saying the benchmark will be for them to be qualified to be picked for the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. With their schedules, there's no way they'd pair up with a 2-loss, or even maybe a 3-loss, Power 4 team. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you're talking, these games are huge, and conference championship games are going to matter. And if you have Texas State versus App State in the conference championship, huge game. But no, I like Texas State a lot. I like App State a lot. They're both on my paper of teams that will contend. We're not making predictions right now of like who's going to win, who's going to be the final group. We've got an idea. We have feelings towards it, but these are teams that are going to.
I feel like this conversation is like bringing to light who I think is going to win these. Win these conferences. Yeah. But Memphis is like for the American. Memphis is such a big outlier for me because if they play as good as they have been playing, then that throws a monkey wrench into everything I'm thinking about this season. Because Memphis is like one of those things where not necessarily a dark horse, but it's like a 1A, 1B. It's Tulane or Memphis really right now for me in that conference. Doesn't mean that others can't, it's college football. Anybody can really have a catch fire season. And with all of the talent that has left college football, there is a lot of room for somebody to step up and be a star because of all of the quarterbacks that have left and everything like that. A lot of room. And the prevailing thought is that there's going to be like some sophomore or freshman that just takes the college football world by storm. It's going to be one of those kind of seasons where it's not an expected person that is one of the best college football players in the country. It's going to be some youngster that just is on fire.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of changes like we've talked about, a lot of new going into this year, new quarterbacks change. But we talk about, you just mentioned Memphis. I mean, this is a team that most would say, I think that they are the favorite to win the American.
As of right now, I would say that's true.
And I mean, that obviously you got Tulane's great team. You got UTSA out there, lurking. They're still a really good team. But Memphis, what they've done, they brought in Mario Anderson from South Carolina as a running back. Hennigan is still their quarterback. Keeping him around is huge for this team. So, I mean, they have continuity. They had 10 wins last season. They got in a lot of Power 4 and Group of 5 talent from the portal. I mean, really, and then you look at their schedule, they play Florida State early. Troy, again, they're going through a lot of changes. That should be a win.
They have a very the
way it is set up is winnable.
Oh my God. They could walk into that Memphis Tulane game with only one loss in theory. I don't think they have the moxie to beat Florida State, but I've been wrong before about that.
Wouldn't that be some shit?
that would be insane.
Jared, we're not saying it's going to happen.
I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying it would be insane.
Watch out, though. You got to be ready for these teams. And then you always have to watch out as Memphis for the academies, playing Navy. I mean, triple option after Florida State's a tough one. So you don't want to go 2 losses back to back there. But the way it's broken down, I think they have every opportunity to be one of the top contenders, if not the top. They gotta handle business. They cannot let these games slip.
Well, I'll tell honestly, Brendan, like with this season, the way things I think will probably shake out, the hope factor with the group of 5 will, I think, make competition be so much more intense.
Oh, hell yeah.
All these teams actually have a hope and potentially a chance to make a run. It doesn't mean that they necessarily will beat a Georgia or beat an Ohio State that's just a monster of a team, but there is always the hope and chance. So that's where I'm at with it, is like, I find it awesome that these guys have hope again, that they could at least go for a run at it.
I'm absolutely with you. And that's why I love about college football is everybody should have, we're in a 134 team division, a league, I should say. And only really about 40 teams have had a chance to play for the national championship. Now these guys have a chance to step up. And hey, we've got good teams. UCF back in the day, Utah back before they were, power in 2004, they got left out. So, I mean, you look at these teams that have been undefeated and they never got their chance. Boise State's of the past. Now we get to see, hey, if this team kicks ass this year, they have a chance. And that Power 4 team better be ready and not sleepwalk through that shit either. So you might get blowouts, but you might get upset too.
I think you just found a nugget. I think you just found a nugget for a show we could do. All of the group of 5 teams that could have made the playoff in the past decade.
Shit, dude, there's a lot, man. There's a
lot.
Oh my
gosh.
But yeah, well, either way, I like what's going on. Let's continue. We're gonna stay in my mind. We just stay with the American. Well, I got UTSA next is a team. Now, I know they lost Frank Harris, which is tough.
Long shot.
But I still like this team as a contender for the American, which in my mind puts them as in contention for that playoff spot. If they do what they need to do, they have every opportunity to be that team. Now, 2023 was solid. They had some rough spots, but once Frank Harris got going, they were good. They haven't added a quarterback yet from the portal, and that's something I'm curious to see if they're going to do in the spring. But right now, I'd say Owen McCown's probably going to be their quarterback. He's got some game action, so I mean that they feel comfortable enough with him so far. But yeah, they've lost some players on defense. Okay, to the portal they have, but they also went out and got some guys: Cam Alexander, Trey Moore from Alabama, or Ian Jackson from Alabama. They got Denver Harris to come in to help back the backfield from LSU as a cornerback. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is a dangerous team that you don't need to overlook. And if they go through their conference schedule, and I mean, look, early they do play Texas State in week 2, and then they play Texas in week 3. That's probably 2 losses in my mind. But if they take down Texas State, they're going to lose to Texas. Texas, I think, is one of the best teams in the country. But you look at the rest of the schedule. Really, the last one again is Memphis, a team that we mentioned. Memphis, there in the middle. So it's a team that could possibly do it. And then of course you got the conference championship games. But it's a team to watch out for. They could upset people. They may not win it, but they should be in the conversation of a good team that could make something happen.
Yeah, the team that let you down last year.
Hey, look, that's why I'm not throwing all my eggs in the basket. I expected more from Frank Harris early, okay? But hey, whatever. You know what? You at UTSA, I'm a meeper, man. I love those guys.
Roadrunner for life.
Hell yeah, man. Hey, look, you got anything on UTSA, or I'm gonna jump into another team?
Let's go on to the next one.
So another team in the American. Not saying they're the favorite, because I think everybody feels Memphis and Tulane are those guys. But USF is a team to watch as somebody that could again make some noise. They have a schedule that lines up well. After the back, the early is it's tough for them when you look at it. But on the back end, if they can make it through, so they've got Alabama in week 3. Chalk that up as a loss, even though they played really well against them last year. Alabama was also going through some troubles in the locker room at that point. Then they play Miami. We know Miami and Mario Cristobal, they're expecting so much more, but I
battle for South Florida right there.
Yeah. And then right after Miami, you go into Tulane, you have a bye week, and then you go to Memphis. Look, again, it's a tough schedule. I'm not saying they're going to do it. I even talked about USF a couple weeks ago when we talked about hardest schedules. But if they can get through it, any of that, even with 2 losses, I mean, they might be up there. I don't know. They're just a team that I thought is interesting. They got Byron Brown still. He's a great quarterback with his running skills. 809 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns on the ground as a redshirt freshman. I mean, they brought in some guys from South Carolina, but it's just a team that I'm interested in. Not saying that they're going to do it, but watch out for them. Another team, if you got anything to say about them, I'll jump.
No, they're always an interesting team because, like Appalachian State, USF always seems to have blazers and very good athletes. Yeah. So if they have any sort of football acumen whatsoever, they usually are pretty tough to beat and put down. The Miami game is interesting to me. I am curious to see that particular game because, it's Miami is kind of one. We've talked about what Miami is in my mind right now, and I'll tell you what, if USF could really wreck some seasons. Even with Memphis, even taking out Memphis and taking them out, they could put themselves in the driver's seat to get to the conference championship game just by taking out Memphis.
Very well, and that's why I threw them on there. Is say they lose to Alabama, but they beat Miami. That's okay. Tulane has now been put on notice. If they beat Miami, Tulane's gonna be like, "Oh shit, we play them next," and they're gonna be amped. We need to be ready. And this is going to be a Tulane team that's just coming off playing Oklahoma and Kansas State. So, I mean, just the way they all line up, it could be a funky season for these teams, man. And I feel like anything could happen.
Yep. I'll be watching it.
It's like the Big 12.
I'll be watching. It'll be interesting. Yeah, it is like, you know what? It is like the Big 12. That's a perfect example. Because that's a bunch of mids, battle of the mids.
Oh, man, poor bastard. It's gonna be bloodshed. It's brutal between all these teams.
That being said, like you said though, it could be like the Big 12 where all these teams just beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're just looking for somebody to separate and to be like that big dog. I know you mentioned it earlier, but you're looking for that from the Big 12, from the American. Who's gonna step up? I don't know. Now there's some teams across the country that I've still got a couple that I'm going to talk about. Liberty is one that I still think will be a favorite, just based off what Chadwell is a great coach. I think he's really talented. They kept, like you mentioned earlier, Kadon Salter, keeping him because he entered the portal and then he removed his name. He was like, you know what, I'm going to stay. That is huge for that team. They have another one, every opportunity to be the lead Cats for the group of 5 representation. And the schedule sets up pretty nice. New Mexico State's going through changes. UTEP's gone through some changes. They still a good team, but maybe a stumble point. You just got to be careful. But then you play Appalachian State in week 4, and that's a huge matchup, absolutely huge matchup. After that, I look at it. Western Kentucky is a team that you need to be careful about because of who they've got. Finley at quarterback. Jacksonville State's one, the newcomers last year. That could be a trip-up game, but I feel like Liberty's going to be ready for it. Just based on what they have. And they went through the portal and got some good players. You got 10 transfers coming in from across the FBS.
Yep.
I mean,
Liberty's on fire right now. I love what they have coming back with both Billy Lucas and Quentin Cooley. Both those running backs coming back from – if what you guys may have not known is the nation's top rushing offense, which was Liberty. Believe it or not.
And they're a hot program. Like I said, Chadwell's doing wonders there. Yeah, well, he did great at Coastal Carolina, got them on the map. He's doing it for Liberty. They played in a New Year's Six Bowl. Now they got smoked by Oregon, but still,
they were outmatched. They were outmatched for sure.
Yeah,
but I mean, look. If it was any other team other than Oregon, I might have given them a better shot. But Oregon was coming off, and they came into that game pissed off.
Oh yeah,
they came pissed off because everybody played. Nobody backed out of that game for Oregon.
Yeah, they were there ready to rock and roll. But Liberty is a team again. I know we probably break it down in sections. At Texas State, App State, Liberty, Boise State, Memphis, Tulane. Those feel like the teams to me out of this group. The other ones I'm giving are just kind of, hey, these are teams. Watch out for them because they could make noise. And if they do, they could really upset teams and put themselves in prime positions. So we talked about Liberty. Let's talk about the MAC for a second because we haven't mentioned them really. Now I know it's the MAC. They're a little bit lower on the scale of teams, but we saw a really good Toledo team last year. But they got beat by a certain team called Miami. And not that Miami, Ohio. Okay. One of the respectable teams from that state. I'm just kidding. Oh boy.
The only one.
I did it.
The only one.
I did it. But no, I like Miami, Ohio. I've got them on my list as well as Toledo. So I'll just hit them real quick. Now, again, they beat Miami, Ohio, beat Toledo in the MAC championship last year. Then they lost to App State in a very close bowl game. They lost Rashad Amos. He just committed today. He's been in the portal since December. So I don't know what the hell he's been doing for class, but he just committed to Mississippi State today.
Online classes is all I got to say to that.
Hey, very well could. But they went out and brought in replacements from Purdue. So they brought in some power talent in Dylan Downing and Mondrell Dean. Defensive end and a running back, really replaced the two things that they lost. Because they also lost Caden Woolard to Oklahoma in the portal. So they lost their two big people. They replaced them with two solid guys. The way that their conference shakes out, I think it's a winnable schedule. Again, you look at it, they play Cincinnati early. Cincinnati was horrific last year, but that's a Power 4 team. And that could count. If they beat them, that counts as a power win. And then you got Notre Dame. But then you go look at it. UMass, Toledo's a good team. But then you got Eastern Michigan, Ohio, Central. They would have to win out. They could lose to Notre Dame, but they'd have to win the rest and win the MAC championship. But they're a team to watch for that could make some noise in the top 20, maybe in the back end of that top 25 when it comes down to fighting for who's the highest ranked team. Miami, Ohio should be right there, in my opinion. Another one that I just mentioned, Toledo. They're in that same, kind of spectrum for me. Is these are teams that they're right there. They have schedules that set up pretty nicely. if they do what they need to do, they're going to be there. Toledo was 11-3 last year. They returned 6 all-MAC players. Gleason, he played a little bit last year. He looks to be the quarterback for 2024. Biggest questions the O-line. They lost 5 starting offensive linemen. Okay, that's tough to replace. But they did go out. They got Jacob James from Ohio State. He's a fifth-year senior. So, I mean, that's some help. They've got, people that have been in the rotation from last season, but they weren't starters. So that's the biggest question. They got to get that O-line squared away. They've got a lot of defense returning. Got some transfers from Florida and Youngstown State. I mean, they're really looking to be, right there in that running for the MAC. Now, they lost their best quarterback, DeQuan Finn, to Baylor, so that sucks for them. But they feel pretty good about Gleason, it seems, from what I've been reading. Now, maybe they go get somebody in the spring portal. I'm not sure. But Toledo, I put Miami, Ohio ahead of them, but Toledo's a team still. Watch out for them in the MAC. Trevor, you got anything about those teams? You feel it's just the schedule shakes out really well for them.
Yeah,
Toledo,
it does.
They play Mississippi State early. Now, I mean, if they knock off Mississippi State with the new coach and all that new they got going on, I mean, they got to play Miami, Ohio, and Western Kentucky. It's possible. I don't know. But yeah,
100% possible for sure.
Yeah, they're not, like I said, they're not in the same spectrum to me as your Liberties, your App States, your Memphis, but they're in contention in my mind. I don't know, not as high, like I said, on the list, and that would be the same for I think my last 2 teams here that I have, and that's Fresno State and UNLV. Now, again, Mountain West teams. Trev, what you think? You got some?
Long shot.
Yeah.
That's all that comes to mind when you say those teams. Only because the Mountain West, I mean, I even think that Air Force brings a wrinkle to the Mountain West because the Air Force is just kind of a forgotten monster usually in the Mountain West, that all of a sudden they sneak out and they come out with whatever 10 wins or something like that. But I really think it's Boise's to lose out in the Mountain West. I mean, if they drop one conference game, that's all it's going to take, because I'd like to think that they probably wouldn't get past the big games on their schedule, but they might. I don't know, man. Mountain West is an interesting one because I just feel like Boise State has so much that it's hard for me to look past them and say that they won't be in the championship.
No, I think that's absolutely fair. Especially again, you look at all the schedules and they all had to run through each other. But when I look at more so Fresno State than UNLV, but I do think that they have potential. And like you said, Air Force is a team you have to watch out for. But when I look at Fresno State, I'd say is my favorite of the 2. Just because of how their schedule shakes out. Now, again, they'll have to play in the Mountain West Championship if they get there. But they start off at Michigan. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's going to be a loss, but Michigan has to be ready for this team. Okay, they did lose some production in Fresno State, but they got 14 starters back from a good team last year. I mean, this Jeff Tedford's 3rd year. He brought in 2 transfers so far, a defensive lineman and an edge, 4-star edge from USC, Corey Foreman.
Yep.
So, I mean, they've got potential. The schedule sets up nice, in my opinion. Yes, you'll probably lose to Michigan, but then you go Sacramento, New Mexico State, New Mexico, UNLV, which is that toss-up game.
Yep.
And then Washington State's a shell of themselves. Nevada, I don't think that's going to be a problem. But then San Jose State's a little tricky. Hawaii's a little tricky just because Hawaii's doing Hawaii things. Air Force. Bye week, Colorado State, and then a UCLA team. So if they're running the table here, and we don't know exactly how UCLA is going to be yet, but if they're kind of mid like we're expecting, that's a team that if they beat them at the end of the season, I mean, that could push them into, a little bit higher in the top 25 or right on that cusp. That's why I had them as a potential. They don't play the main guys out there until they would play them in the Mountain West Championship.
Right.
So that's what, when I
That
looked
makes
at their
sense to
schedule, I
me.
was like, yeah, that's a team that could contend for it.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the UCLA game at the end is definitely a tricky situation
It
because
is.
while they will be breaking in a whole lot of new things with UCLA, by the time the end of the season comes around, you kind of will know what UCLA is for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
Oh, yeah.
There's not going to be many surprises, so it's going to be a head-up battle. And more than likely, UCLA will have a talent on their roster. I mean, they still have talent on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm going to reiterate it. This next couple weeks is going to tell a lot about whether we come back on here and be like, so just kidding. Here's what's going to change.
Yeah. Like we're talking on Twitter with some of our other, football, groups and, their podcast shows. And they're like, who's ready for this week? And everybody's like, yeah, this week. To hell with this week. Like it's throwing us all off on our on our stats and our notes. And like, we just got to roll with the wind, man, roll with the punches. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Again, we'll let you know what happens as soon as we can. We'll maybe some short videos if big names pop, and I don't know what the hell's going to happen. But last team for me, Trevor, I mentioned them earlier. UNLV, they got a tough schedule, okay, but this team is one that I feel like they've got a good core that they could maybe make something happen. Now they lost Jalen Mavia. If I messed up his name, he just left. He had a great season last year. He's going to be USC's head quarterback. So he transfers to USC, and then UNLV goes out and they're like, okay, we got to find somebody. They went to Holy Cross. Now I know it's Holy Cross; it's a lower level school, but this guy Matthew Sluka, he played really damn well last year, and they feel like he can fit right in with that offense. They came out and they got some nice players from the Power Four school to help fill some gaps. I think when I looked at their schedule, and I know it's tough, but if they knock off Houston early, who's again a Power Five opponent or a Power Four opponent, they play Kansas in week 3. Kansas, I mean, Kansas, we said they've got the easiest schedule in college football. But if they look past them and they try to, because they got Illinois right around the corner, I mean, they could
throw everything off.
Hey, I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to happen again. They have to play Fresno State, which is a strong team. They have to play Syracuse, which is upping. I mean, they've got some real fire around that program. But after that, they play Boise State. Again, Boise State, I think Boise State's the main. If they look over them, it's another team. If they look over them. So I don't know. I think Fresno State's got the better setup. That's why I said them first. UNLV, team to watch. Maybe upset somebody. I don't think they're going to be the team, but just watch out. Just watch out.
So real quick.
Sure.
Off the cuff, who's your number one favorite contender?
I got to go Texas State just because of that schedule. It sets up so well for 12-0.
All right.
It sets up.
I'm actually switching mine up a little bit. I'm switching mine up a little bit because I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, with the veteran quarterback coming back, it's got. I think maybe Liberty might make a run. I think maybe Liberty might make a run at it.
Yeah.
I think with all the returning people that they have coming back,
I
feel like that they are set up well to make another 12-win season happen.
Yeah, I agree. So let's make a segment of this. All right.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to write this note down real quick. So when we talk about who are our favorites of all these teams we talked about, favorite group of 5, Liberty is.
I'm going to go with Liberty just because of the returning starters that they have back, the veterans quarterback with the 2 running backs and all of the transfers that they've got in. Team's hot, and I think it's just going to stay that way.
Yeah, I think Texas State for me because of the schedule shakeout. If not them, Liberty and Memphis.
Yeah,
are like because I really like what Memphis has, and I think that they've got
really speed,
well.
man. Again, I know I've said it a few different times, but Memphis has got some speed on that team that is going to be tough for a lot of teams to stop. Not saying Boise can't. Not saying that Boise can't, because if they do have a really good season, it's easy. It would be an easy pick for the committee. Speaking, broad spectrum look at it, it'd be an easy pick to put that Boise in because of their schedule and how difficult it kind of shakes out to be. But, that's all hypothetical at this point.
Boise's up there too. So I'd say there's the 4 main, probably, maybe 5 with Tulane. App State's right there on that.
They're on the cusp. They're on the cusp for sure.
It's going to be a hell of a battle, guys. It's going to be a hell of a battle. And all these teams have a chance to get in that one spot.
Yep.
Now, if all these teams go undefeated, I mean, I don't know how the rankings will happen. But they're not. They're going to play each other in the conference championships, and it's all going to shake out.
Pretty sure we've at least named 2 from every conference that the group of 5 has. So somebody's going to get knocked off somewhere, because even if they don't meet in the regular season, they're going to meet in the championship game. So,
and I'm glad. I love talking about it because right now notes, and I'm like, ooh, this team. But then when we talk about it, I'm like, actually, UNLV doesn't. No, not necessarily. They could make. They could
have enough good points. Nope, you're off.
And then I'm like, you know what? When I talk about it, it's a little bit different. But no, So I think we've got our top group, and
I think
we'll clip that and shoot it out.
Our group of 5 out of the group of 5.
Yeah, hey, that's great, Trevor. I like that. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a wild season for the group of 5. They've got so much to play for. I wonder how they're going to handle the pressure. I know it's going to have more heart, more meaning, but it's also more pressure too. Right. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. But yeah, that's our segment on the group of 5 guys. They don't get enough credit. They don't get enough talk about on the big media outlet. We just want to make sure so Trevor, anything else about
No, I think I'm all good, man. Y'all take it easy.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys. Go like, subscribe, and comment. And for the listeners on the podcast, go check out our YouTube, man. Go subscribe. So we appreciate you. You have a great night.
Take it easy.